From the outside, Lucas Reed's life looked like something ripped from a luxury magazine spread. Private jets, designer suits, a last name that could open more doors than any resume. His birthdays weren't just parties, they were red carpet events where celebrities mingled like old family friends. But behind the gleaming facade was a truth no one could see. Lucas was failing, miserably. Every test, every class, another mark against him. Teachers gave up, classmates whispered behind his back. Even his father, Charles Reed, the tech billionaire who graced Forbes covers like clockwork, looked at him not with pride but disappointment. At 17, Lucas attended Atlanta's most prestigious private high school, not because he earned it, but because the Reed name acted like a golden key. No entrance exams, no interviews. Just a quiet wire transfer and a reputation that spoke louder than his grades ever could. In inside marble hallways lined with portraits of alumni who went on to run nations, Lucas was infamous. Not for brilliance, not for leadership, but for arrogance, expensive clothes, and a track record of academic disaster. Teachers passed him out of fear, not merit. And Lucas didn't care. Why should he? His future was already secured. Or so he thought. When the school counselor summoned him about his plummeting grades, Lucas leaned back, smirked, and said, "I could buy this school if I wanted to. What grade is going to change that?" The line became legend, but no one dared challenge him. After all, no one wanted to risk losing the Reed family's donations at home. The atmosphere was colder. Charles Reed was a man of precision and steel, self-made, unapologetically harsh, and he had no tolerance for excuses, not even from his only son. "You're an embarrassment," Charles told him one night after yet another call from the school. "If you worked for me, you'd be fired." Lucas crossed his arms. "I'm not your employee. I'm your son. The world doesn't care. Either you become someone, or you'll just be another rich kid with a last name and no backbone." "I won't carry you." The silence that followed cut deeper than any punishment. Charles meant every word. The next morning, Lucas strutted into school as if nothing had happened, sliding his sleek Audi into the faculty parking lot. Another birthday gift. The air was thick with stares, some filled with envy, others with contempt. But there was one pair of eyes that didn't turn away. They belonged to an older black woman, likely in her 50s, mopping near a side entrance. Her posture was upright, her gaze quiet but sharp. Her uniform was wrinkled, yet her presence was dignified. Lucas didn't even register her. To him, she was invisible. Just another janitor blending into the background of his golden cage. The cracks in Lucas's golden world began as hairline fractures, small enough to ignore but impossible to stop once they spread. His grades, already dangling over the edge, began to plummet at freefall speed. Math, 24%. Dot history, 31%. Biology, a crushing 0. These weren't just numbers, they were verdicts. Each test came back like a slap, the red ink screaming louder than any teacher's voice. His usual smug grin began to falter. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Charles cut off his credit cards. Took back the car. No more sleek Audi gliding into the faculty lot. Now Lucas rode the same yellow school bus as everyone else, an unthinkable humiliation in his world. He told himself it didn't matter, but every bump on that bus ride felt like a dent in his pride. On bitter morning, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, Lucas trudged down the hallway. That's when he heard it. A voice, soft yet deliberate. "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." He stopped. The janitor, the same woman by the side entrance, was mopping, her voice almost a whisper. "What did you just say?" he asked, half curious, half dismissive. He looked up, unafraid. "Nothing you're ready to understand, boy." He gave a short, skeptical laugh, but something in her tone unsettled him. She turned away, her mop gliding over the tile like nothing had happened. Days passed, but her words clung to him like a splinter. He found himself replaying them in his mind during class, wondering why a janitor would quote a philosopher. The breaking point came in the counselor's office. She didn't sugarcoat it this time. "Lucas, you're not just at risk. You are at the bottom of your entire senior class. Statistically, you are failing out." "I'll hire a tutor," he muttered. You've already had 3, they all quit. The words landed like stones. Leaving the office, he ducked out through the back entrance, and there she was again, scrubbing up a soda spill. She noticed him this time, straightened up, and gave a small smile. "You remembered what I said, didn't you?" she asked. "Yeah." It stuck with me, kind of weird for a janitor to be quoting ancient philosophers. Her eyes sharpened. It's weirder when a boy with the whole world at his feet can't pass a reading test. It stung. Because it was true. "You used to be a teacher, didn't you?" he asked. "Not just philosophy. I taught plenty more before life threw me off balance." "Teach me then," Lucas said quietly. "Help me, please." She studied him, her silence heavier than any lecture. "One condition. You leave your name and your pride at the door. You start from 0, from the floor." "Fine," he whispered. I can't keep failing." She handed him a worn spiral notebook. "Come early, before class, meet me here. And every evening after school you write what you've learned. Not facts, truth." "What if I get it wrong?" Her answer was a small, knowing smile. "Then you might finally be getting it right." The next morning, Lucas showed up before the sun. The school was wrapped in fog and silence. He found her in the east wing, polishing the floor in slow, perfect circles, humming softly through her earbuds. "You said you'd teach me," he began. She removed one earbud, meeting his eyes. "I remember, but it won't be easy." "I don't care, I need this." "Then let's begin. My name is Evelyn Wallace." The name felt solid, like the opening of a new chapter. Evelyn had been at the school for 3 years. Before that, other schools. Before that, she paused, then locked eyes with him. "I was a college professor. English, literature, and philosophy." Lucas's eyes widened. "Why leave that for this?" Her answer was quiet but unshakable. "Because sometimes life strips away everything you thought you'd keep and leaves you only with what you know, and I still know how to teach." In that moment, Lucas realized this wasn't going to be about passing tests. This was about learning how to see. The air lessons began before the first bell. The building would still be wrapped in early morning silence, the air cool and carrying the faint scent of disinfectant from Evelyn's night shift. Lucas would meet her in a quiet corridor or the forgotten corner of the east wing, notebook in hand, still fighting the urge to mask his vulnerability with arrogance. Evelyn's teaching was unlike anything he'd experienced. She didn't hand him worksheets or recite definitions. She didn't tell him what to memorize. Instead, she asked questions that seemed simple but landed like stones in his chest. "What did this sentence make you feel? Why do you think the character stayed silent instead of speaking? Can you tell me what courage sounds like?" She wasn't after answers, she was after truth. In the evenings, after her custodial duties, Evelyn would sit across from him in the abandoned library. Its dusty shelves and unused tables became their secret classroom. She'd read his entries, written in hurried, uneven handwriting, and respond not with praise or criticism, but with sharper questions. She pushed him to go deeper, to pull apart his own assumptions, to write not for grades, but for honesty. Slowly, the books he once saw as chores began to open themselves to him. Baldwin's words burned into his mind. Morrison's prose felt like music. The pages didn't just tell stories, they spoke to him, provoked him, demanded something from him. His notebook started filling up not with empty sentences, but reflections on his father, his loneliness, and the gnawing emptiness that money had never touched. One evening, as Lucas was writing, 2 football players passed by laughing. "Look at Reed," one sneered, writing love letters to the janitor. His grip on the pen tightened, ready to snap back, but Evelyn placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "You don't measure depth with a shallow ruler," she whispered. The words stopped him cold, but even as Lucas grew, tension swelled in the background. The school noticed his change and noticed Evelyn. Rumors began to spread. Some students were curious, others mocked him outright. But Lucas didn't flinch. He had something new now, purpose. Then came the message from Charles. "One last warning, turn things around, or you're out. No trust fund, no apartment, nothing." Lucas read it, but instead of fear, he felt an unfamiliar steadiness. Weeks passed, and the ripple effect of Evelyn's teaching began to show. Lucas started helping a classmate in biology, then another in history. Soon, a small group was gathering in the library with them after hours. Evelyn never turned anyone away. They read, they debated, they wrote until their hands cramped. The room became a refuge for the unseen. Kids who struggled, who had been dismissed, who carried stories no one had bothered to hear. Quotes began to pass between them like secret passwords. The function of freedom is to free someone else. Morrisland, if you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. Hurston. But the administration wasn't pleased. One rainy afternoon, Evelyn was called into the office. The assistant principal's tone was clipped, rehearsed. We've had concerns. Parents are asking why their children are spending time with janitorial staff after hours. This isn't in your job description. Evelyn's voice was calm but firm. Neither is saving a kid's life, but I've done that anyway. The warning was clear. Stop or face consequences. When Lucas heard, he was furious. This is insane. You're helping people. That's what systems do, Evo replied quietly. They don't attack what's broken, they attack what works. Lucas's jaw tightened. I'll tell my dad. I'll go to the board. I'll go public. Not yet, she said, her gaze steady. Your voice needs to stand on its own. Not as a Reed, but as Lucas. And for the first time in his life, Lucas wanted that. He didn't just want to pass, he wanted to matter. Winter swept into Atlanta with a slow, heavy hand, laying a gray hush over the mornings. The hallways of the school felt darker, quieter. But inside Lucas, something brighter had begun to burn. It wasn't arrogance anymore. It was resolve. One early morning in the abandoned library, Evelyn sat across from him, her hands resting over a worn book. She leaned forward, her voice low but deliberate. It's time I tell you the one thing no one teaches, she said. Lucas straightened. I'm listening. The secret to learning isn't in grades or diplomas or even knowledge. The secret is transformation. She began pacing, her eyes distant as if looking back on her own battles. Most people learn just enough to survive, to repeat what they've been told and pass the next test. But transformation? That's when something inside you breaks and you rebuild it stronger. Lucas stayed silent, letting her words sink in. She handed him a book with frayed blue binding, The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. Its pages were alive with handwritten notes in the margins. This saved me when I had nothing left, she said softly. You're giving me this? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. I'm trusting you with it, because when I first saw you, you weren't arrogant, you were drowning, and something in you still wanted to live. Lucas clutched the book like it was a lifeline. I'll read every word, and then I'll write something real for you. From then on, his determination sharpened. He began raising his hand in class, challenging lessons, asking uncomfortable questions. In history, he interrupted a lecture to ask, why does the textbook treat slavery like it was a footnote? The room went still. When the teacher cautiously asked where he got that perspective, Lucas answered without hesitation, from Du Bois, Baldwin, and a woman who knows how to teach. The small revolution in the library kept growing. One student brought a friend, another brought two. Before long, Evelyn was leading circles of 10 students after hours, guiding them through books, essays, and conversations that peeled away the easy answers. They debated justice, freedom, and truth until the janitorial lights flickered overhead. But the more they grew, the more dangerous it became. One afternoon, Evelyn was summoned again to the office. The assistant principal's voice was colder this time. You're not a certified instructor here. This is not your role. We're going to have to ask you to stop. Evelyn didn't flinch. Maybe it should be my role. When Lucas heard, he felt something break inside him. They're shutting you down, he said through clenched teeth. They're scared, Evelyn replied. Scared of what? Of someone with no official power teaching students how to have real power. Lucas's first instinct was to fight. I'll speak out. I'll call my dad, I'll go to the press. No, she said firmly. Your voice needs to be yours, not his. Then, one rainy afternoon, Lucas came home drenched, holding a paper stamped with a bold red A, the first he'd ever earned. The title, The Courage to Unlearn. His teacher's note read, "You've found your voice." For the first time, Lucas thought he might finally have something worth showing his father. But the moment he handed Charles the paper, the dismissal was instant. "This isn't academic. It's sentimental. Who taught you to write like this?" When Lucas answered, "Evelyn, the janitor," his father's expression turned venomous. "You're learning from someone who mops floors? She's a failure. If you keep seeing her, you lose everything, your money, your car, your name." Lucas's voice shook, but he didn't back down. "Then maybe I need to lose it all to find out who I really am." The next morning, Evelyn was gone. Fired quietly, no goodbyes, no warning. Her mop bucket and coat were the only proof she'd ever been there. The library went silent again, and for the first time since meeting her, Lucas felt like he couldn't breathe. The days after Evelyn's disappearance were hollow. The library was empty, the pages in Lucas's notebook stayed blank, and the quiet that once felt sacred now felt suffocating. His grades began to slip again, not because he'd forgotten what she taught him, but because the fire that drove him had been doused. Then, one morning, he noticed the bulletin board near the main entrance. Pinned neatly in the center was an announcement in bold letters. Senior Speech Contest. Topic: What it means to win in life. The auditorium would be packed. Parents, faculty, and even community leaders would attend. It wasn't just another school event. It was a stage. For most, the contest was a chance to earn scholarships or pad a resume. For Lucas, it was war. That night, he sat at his desk. Evelyn's notebook opened beside him. The familiar phrases she had written in red ink seemed to glow off the page. Learning is transformation. Pride is a trap disguised as protection. You don't need permission to become someone new. He opened a fresh notebook and wrote at the top, "Not for grades, not for applause, for truth." The night of the contest, the air inside the auditorium was thick with anticipation. Parents sat in expensive coats. Students fidgeted in polished shoes. College scouts with clipboards murmured in the back row backstage. Lucas stood in plain navy jeans and a dark shirt. No tailored suit, no flashy shoes. No Reed family crest. Just him. When his name was called, the crowd's reaction was mixed. Whispers, a few chuckles, some curious stares. He stepped into the spotlight. "My name is Lucas Reed," he began, his voice steady. "Some of you know me as the kid who wasted a golden ticket, who didn't care, who failed. They say I had everything. But I didn't have the one thing that mattered. Someone who believed in me, until she showed up." The room quieted. She wasn't my teacher, not officially. She wasn't paid to help me. She had no office, no authority. Just a mop and a heart big enough to see through my anger. His gaze swept the audience. "She taught me how to read between the lines, in books and in life. She taught me how to write, how to think, how to listen. She didn't just clean the floors of this school, she cleared the fog in my head." A few parents shifted uncomfortably. "But she was fired," Lucas continued, his voice tightening. "Silenced. Because systems don't like it when someone at the bottom starts making a real difference. So I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to honor her." He lifted the worn notebook. "She told me learning was transformation, that real winning isn't about being rich or powerful, it's about becoming someone worth remembering." His tone softened. "She might not be here tonight, but she's in every word I'm saying. So what does it mean to win in life? It means waking up, letting go of your name, finding your truth, and using it to lift others." Silence then, a single clap, another. And suddenly the room erupted. Applause thundered through the auditorium, people rising to their feet, some with tears in their eyes. From the back of the room, a woman in a headscarf stood quietly, her eyes glistening. Evelyn. She had returned just to see him speak. Lucas's throat tightened, but he smiled. That night, the video of his speech spread across the school's social media, then to alumni networks, and eventually the press. The headline appeared everywhere: "Billionaire's son credits school janitor for saving his life." Offers poured in for Evelyn's speaking engagements, teaching positions, opportunities she hadn't been given in years. Doors that had once been slammed shut now opened wide. And for Lucas, the victory wasn't the applause. It was knowing that Evelyn's voice and the truth she carried could no longer be ignored. Evelyn didn't just get her job back, she stepped into a whole new chapter. The attention from Lucas's speech snowballed into something neither of them could have predicted. First came a local college's invitation for her to speak. Then another. Soon she was offered a full-time teaching position. But Evelyn didn't simply return to the classroom. She walked back into it, like a storm, confident, grounded, and unapologetic about the kind of teaching she believed in. She refused to follow outdated scripts or reduce learning to test prep. And this time, the room listened. Lucas, meanwhile, closed his high school chapter not with pity passes but with real achievement. Every class he passed was earned. Every paper marked with his handwriting was a battle won. Ivy League schools called with offers, but he turned them down. Instead, he chose a small college known for social justice and community programs. When a reporter asked why, he didn't hesitate: "Because I want to teach the way she taught me and build the kind of place where no one has to ask to be seen." It wasn't just talk. A few months after graduation, Lucas showed up at a modest front porch, diploma and a thick envelope in hand. Evelyn answered the door, wearing a cardigan and her familiar calm smile. "You didn't have to come all the way out here," she said. "I did," he replied, handing her the envelope. Inside was his diploma, his college acceptance letter, and something else, a handwritten proposal. "I want to start something," he said, eyes bright. "A center, a place where people can learn the way I did, with honesty, depth, and no shame. I want to call it the Evelyn Institute." Evelyn's eyes filled. "Why me?" "Because everything I am now started with you." She smiled through her tears. "Only if we do it together." "Always," he said. Months later, the Evelyn Institute opened its doors in a repurposed community center. The building was humble, creaky floors, mismatched chairs, chalkboards salvaged from old schools, but it pulsed with life. Kids who had been written off by the system now had a second chance. There were mentorship programs, late-night writing circles, open debates, and shelves lined with donated books. Evelyn taught again, with her trademark blend of rigor and compassion, and Lucas ran programs that reached deeper into the community. Word spread. Awards came in, articles were written, but the greatest reward came in moments no reporter could capture. Like the afternoon a 12-year-old handed Evelyn a notebook and whispered, "This place made me feel smart for the first time." Evelyn cried that day. So did Lucas. Evan Charles Reed came quietly to the Institute's opening. He stood in the back, watching his son speak about justice, humility, and the responsibility to lift others. After the event, father and son met outside. "I didn't expect to cry," Charles admitted. Lucas looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't expect to forgive you." They embraced, not as billionaire and heir, but as two men trying to meet in the middle. Years passed. The Institute grew into a city cornerstone, a place where people's stories mattered as much as their grades. One evening, Lucas took the stage to accept a National Education Award. Cameras flashed, the crowd hushed. He gripped the microphone, letting the silence linger. Lucas looked around as the crowd hushed. He gripped the microphone, letting the silence linger. "They said I failed everything, until I learned one thing that changed my life. That greatness doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing others. And sometimes the person who teaches you the most isn't in a suit. They're holding a mop, quoting philosophers when no one's listening. Her name is Evelyn Wallace, and she didn't just save my grades. She saved my soul." The applause rose like a wave, and for Lucas, it wasn't about the stage or the recognition. It was about keeping the promise he'd made in that quiet hallway years ago, to never stop learning and to never stop seeing the unseen.